Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I hereby call the Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representative Burkhart. Here. Representative Doggett.
Present.
Representative Haynes. Here. Representative Miller. Representative Moon.
Here.
Chairman Crawford.
Present.
Chairman Carr. Chairman Rudd.
Here.
Chairman Rudd, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do any members have any personal orders before we begin? Seeing none, today we have 6 bills on the calendar, but 2 have been rolled 1 week. HB 118 by Ritchie's been rolled 1 week. HB 1398 by Harris has been rolled 1 week. I'll be first up. We are hearing HB 434 by Chairman White. He is at the podium. We have a motion and a second. And we have no amendments, is that correct?
That is correct.
Please tell us about your bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. The House Bill 434 is a bill that I bring for the committee at the urging of my local community. I won't get into issues unless you want to, but we have an issue with a particular department or elected office down there, which is making it very difficult for the citizens of the county to get their car tags. And so when I filed this bill, or not filed it, when I presented it last fall, I probably got more press out of this than anything I've done since I've been up here because of the frustration in our community. And so what this bill says is that if a county legislative body or a county commission passes a resolution to no confidence in a county officer, then you can have a petition signed by only 1% of the registered voters in that county. Statute is 15%, but on this particular issue, it'd go down to 1%. And the reason I was asked to carry that is this complete frustration. I don't know if anybody's familiar with what I'm referring to, but when you have people in our community who are standing in line 3, 4, 5 hours to get their car tags, and it doesn't improve month after month after month. And then when you have car dealers, when you go and buy a car in our county, and you've got to get your temporary tag after 30 days, well, 30 days happens, they ask for an extension for 30 more, so that's 60. I had to call the state revenue and say, can you give us an extension to 120 days for a temporary tag, because the auto dealers could not get back from this clerk's office the temporary tag. And they were up to 150 days, almost a half a year waiting on a temporary tag. Now, the problem with that is when you buy a car and then you're driving on a temporary tag that expires and you go out of our community where the police don't really know the issue, you're stopped, pulled over, and given a ticket. So this is being brought at the request of my community. We'll see where it goes. I'm hoping that the county commission can alleviate the problem, but it's been a half a year or longer. This started back in even early summer, and it just hasn't changed. And so at the request of my local community, I am bringing this bill before you.
Chairman Moon, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsor. Is it true that they voted not to stop vehicles with out-of-date license plate? You know, this is the 12 months is run where you have the green mountain plate, previous years replaced with the blue plate. Mm-hmm. Is this a result of what's going on in the office you're speaking?
If you're talking about just in our community or statewide?
No, in Shelby County.
Not that I'm aware of for statewide, but in our county, it's kind of understood if you're drawing on a temporary tag, you know, it's probably for that reason. And so I went to the Department of Revenue. I said, can we work on something in Tennessee where when you buy your car at an auto dealer, let you issue the tag from the auto dealer, because it was really hurting them. They were backed up, you know, for months and months. But it's kind of, you know, but I've talked to people who went to Atlanta and they were pulled over and given a ticket because they still driving on a temporary out-of-date tag. It's just a real problem, and our community is trying to deal with it. It's one of those issues. that we've got to get past, but we're trying to get past it, and this is one avenue that they have asked me on the state level to intervene.
Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a statewide bill, though.
This, it would be, because the way it's written, but the safeguard, when we were putting it together, is your county commission or your county legislative body would have to do a resolution also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Crawford. Did you?
No,
Okay.
I think this affects Knox County.
Yeah, it's I believe it just affects what charter counties? There's 2 counties right now that's charter. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we are voting on HB 0434. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. You go on to local full.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have HB 0405 by Representative Ritchie. Do I hear a motion? Second. We have some testimony. It will go out of session. If any objections, we'll go out of session to hear from constituents and testimony. Seeing none, we are out of session. I'd ask that Debbie Gould with the League of Women Voters, if you could either approach the podium or at the desk. If you're at the desk, turn your on the left. There looks like a little man speaking. The red light will go on when you turn it.
Okay, and this is for House Bill 405?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Gould with the League of Women Voters of Tennessee. We are a volunteer, nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government. I'm speaking today in opposition to House Bill 405 that would transform Tennessee into a system with closed primaries. We believe that election laws need to be voter-centric, making it easier for voters to select representatives of their choice. Closed primaries move this process in the wrong direction and have the potential to further reduce Tennessee's dismal voter participation rate. House Bill 405 would require all voters to declare their party affiliation, and that information would be included on their permanent voter registration record. New or existing registered voters who do not declare a political party affiliation will be listed as an independent on the voter's permanent registration record. We have seen the trends in recent years. Most elections in Tennessee are decided in the primary, not in the general election. In 2022, as most of you know, 41% of the races for Tennessee's House of Representatives were uncontested. And we know that uncontested races result in low voter turnout. Who will be left out if Tennessee moves to a closed primary system? Voters who are not declaring their affiliation with the 2 major parties, including both voters who identify as independent and minor third-party voters such as libertarians. We also know that millennials and Gen Z voters are avoiding party affiliations and that a closed primary system will limit their participation. Many veterans are also avoiding a commitment to a political party. Closed primaries will limit their ability to choose their representatives since the major decisions have been made before they ever have an opportunity to vote in the general election. Primaries are paid with our tax dollars. Let's not limit the ability of Tennessee citizens to select the representatives of their choice when they go to the polls. Thank you.
Have any questions of the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation, your comments. In your opinion, are you suggesting that this bill will take away or the rights of any Tennessee citizens to vote?
It will limit their choices, and when we have few choices, fewer people vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Seeing no other, thank you. And next up is Shannon Rasmussen. Please tell us your name, who you represent.
Hi, is this on?
You see a red light? Where the little face is? Okay.
There. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi, my name is Shannon Rasmussen, and I live in East Nashville. I've lived here for about a year. The members of this body take an oath upon their election that says they will not approve any bill which is injurious to the people or that has a tendency to lessen or abridge their rights and privileges. HB 405 would do exactly that by requiring voters to declare a political party before voting in a primary. Independent voters are one of the largest and fastest growing groups of voters in Tennessee, and one of the largest segments within that group is our military veterans. Pew Research estimates that 50% of military voters consider themselves independent, and that includes 39% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. My family is an Army family who invested 23 years in service to this great nation. We served alongside people whose backgrounds and beliefs differed greatly from our own. People who made the same sacrifices under the same flag in service to the same great nation. Though our values were different, our commitment to this nation was not. The military must be apolitical because its oath is to the Constitution, not a president or a leader or a party. When my family lived at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, we weren't allowed to place campaign signs in our on-base housing. We had limits to the size of political bumper stickers on our on-base cars. We accepted these restrictions because we understood the requirement to put our nation ahead of politics. The nation required us to be apolitical during our military service, and this legislation would punish those apolitical views. At the same time, this body considers limiting the voting rights of independent veterans. Secretary of State Trey Hargett offers the Tennessee Honor Vote program. It allows Tennesseans to dedicate their vote to a veteran or active duty service member who, quote, ensures our freedom and democracy and allows us to cast a vote on Election Day. Understand that veterans have sacrificed their own well-being in service to this nation, and we are an engaged block of voters. Many veterans will support capable, service-oriented, problem-solving candidates regardless of their political party. Understand, too, that if you exclude veterans from the same voting rights they fought to defend, you will lose the support of that voting bloc, and that support will land somewhere else with someone else. To the members of this committee and the sponsor of this bill, who is also a veteran, it's not too late to honor your oath to avoid diminishing the rights and privileges of Tennesseans. As elected officials who represent all the people in your district, it should be easy to vote against a bill whose language includes the words allegiance to the political party. But you should vote no even if it isn't easy, because it also wasn't easy for veterans to put themselves in harm's way to protect all the people. Stand against House Bill 405 and stand for the veterans who stood for you. Thank you.
Any questions from members for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Trent, I hope I pronounce this right. Is it Bing or Binga?
Ben's close.
Ben's, huh?
Don't worry. Check, check. Ah. All right.
Oh, if you hold 1 minute. What? What I asked is, we have rules, that everybody that, except for members, need to be seated because of fire and security regulation. You need to try to find a seat. If you could squish together, whatever, in case we have to exit the room. Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. Go. Give them a minute to be seated, then we'll proceed.
Mr. Chairman.
The crowd that's in here, I was just told, is leadership Franklin County. Want to welcome all of you. Yes, Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to ask you to recognize the leadership group, but you did that as soon as
Okay.
I called your name. So thank y'all for being with us today.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, y'all. I'm Trent Benj. I'm a 17-year-old, and I'll be voting in an election for the first time this year if Nashville has its municipal elections, or if we don't, that'll be next year for the first time in both presidential, congressional, etc. And so I come to you concerned of the effects of this bill for me, who I consider myself more of an independent. And so that means in most states, I couldn't vote in the primary. But I'm lucky to live in Tennessee where I am able to vote in one, or at least in a year from now when I will be able to. And so that means that in Tennessee, I can vote regardless of a party affiliation, regardless of if I consider myself a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, Constitutional Party, anything. And so House Bill 405 would put an end to that. And that would put us in a league of states like California, New York, Maryland, and New Jersey, states that all have closed primaries. Let's say this bill gets passed and I register as an independent. I would, to quote the bill, not be eligible to vote in a primary election. That means if there was a Democrat that I really liked, I couldn't show my support by voting for them. If there was a Republican I really liked, I couldn't show my support by voting for them. That is, unless I changed my voter registration party affiliation 30 days prior to the primary, something which is often not done by many people in these states, especially because most people don't have their candidate picked 30 days out. And so, for instance, for the Republican primary for Tennessee's 5th congressional district race just last year, a plurality of voters surveyed, 24%, say they did not have a candidate that they had decided to vote on, and that was just a month out from the election. Overall, this bill would hurt people like me the most. When I go into the voting booth the first time later this year and then next year, I want to be able to vote for and support the candidates which I think best represent me. Therefore, I ask that all of y'all vote not to advance this bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
Have questions of the witness? I have one question
Yes,
for
sir.
you. Did you know that under current state law, it is illegal for an independent to vote in the Republican or Democrat primaries?
I was not aware of that, sir.
That's
No.
current state law, but it's not being enforced.
Ah,
All right.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing none, next witness up is Scott Golden. A genuine celebrity. Please tell us your name and who you represent.
My name is Scott Golden. I'm the chairman of the Tennessee Republican Party. Thanks all the members. Good to see everybody. Thank you for consideration of this bill. I think Representative Rudd just said it very well, that the current law does state that you are to align with the party in the primary. Most of the things that were mentioned were taking away the right of vote. Everybody has the opportunity to vote in the November election. What we are discussing is who should have the opportunity to vote in a local or party primary in either May or August. And unfortunately, what our mantra in the Republican Party is that we want to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And there were cases in 2018 where we actually had candidates that were running as Democrats actually took their opportunity to come and vote in the Republican primary in Williamson County. Now, they aligned with the party of their choice for that day, but they had no intention of becoming a Republican Party supporter. So we have instances like this, and unfortunately, it's more and more left up to the parties to sort of police these. Most notably, the biggest case was probably in Senator Rosalind Carita's case, where the Democrat Party decided to overturn an election because they thought a number of Republicans had voted for her. That happened in 2008. So we have had, with our open primary system, we are allowing people to make choices. And again, let's talk about, make sure that there's a delineation between an August vote for primary for each party's candidates versus a November vote where every independent and every Republican and Democrat will get the right to choose who they want. So fundamentally for us, this is an issue of fairness within the election system where people are voting with the party that they choose to align with. And if they choose to change their allegiance over time, you guys have given them the ability to make that change if necessary. So thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions? I have one. Isn't it in this past election, like we stated earlier, that it's already under current law, but it's a minor misdemeanor, so
Yes, sir.
DAs haven't been bothering because they're backed up with murders and a major crime. It's against current state law, but it's becoming so blatant now. Actually, candidates are actually sending out postcards and talking about it in the press about encouraging people from another party to vote and say our party or the other party to affect the outcome of local elections.
So I know that there are others that are more learned that might be able to, but the language is intent. So for any DA that's trying to prosecute, you have to figure out what the intent of the voter is. So that makes it a very gray area and tough to prove. But yes, in the local primaries in May of this year, there were candidates that openly campaigned to the other party saying, please come and vote for us. And then, unfortunately, again, both the Democrat and the Republican Party are left afterwards to try to figure out if that was an inherently fair election or not.
I think the only way to actually for a DA to prove that someone is doing this is if they, let's say someone with a straight Democrat voting record or someone that has no voting record that votes independent, that they vote in the Republican primary, and I'm just using that as an example, could be the other party's primary, that the only way to prove that they had an intent to violate the laws if the next election, usually a year away, they go back and vote in the other party's primary. That would be proof that they only crossed over for and broke the current state law. So most DAs don't track that over a year's period.
Sadly, the case that I spoke of where the candidate in an opposition party voted in a different primary was never prosecuted. And that was the clearest intent because they were on the ballot as a Democrat while voting in the Republican primary.
Okay. Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being with us today. Could you tell us what are the purposes of a primary election?
It's for the voters within that party to pick the candidate that they want to represent them to the general election.
So if a person wanted to be considered to be on the ballot or on the ticket to be of a certain party, are there rules or guidelines or any kind of qualifications that candidate must meet to be considered maybe as a Republican candidate for an office?
So state law requires that both the Democrat and the Republican Party have rules. The way we phrase it is bona fide. And there are several steps within the Republican Party that you have to meet in order to what we consider to be a bona fide Republican. I'm not sure what the Democrat steps are, but in the Republican Party, it's laid out in our bylaws what it takes. And it generally comes down to participation and voting.
So if someone wanted to identify as, say, a Republican to put their name on the ballot, they did not meet those qualifications, but they did get their signatures, what would be the process for them there? Would they be able to remain on the ballot as a Republican, or what happens?
So one of the qualifications to be a Republican in the state of Tennessee is participate in Republican primaries. And so there's really two different things. If you're saying that there is a candidate that is really a Democrat that votes enough in the Republican primary because of our current system, if they meet those standards, they would be allowed to run. If a candidate doesn't meet the standards that we have set, then state law takes over where we actually, then it's been updated in the last several years, but we would remove them temporarily from the ballot to make sure that the candidate then has the chance to correct whatever failure that they may have. And if they are unable to do that, then we notify the Division of Elections and their name is removed from our Republican primary.
So it's very specific how that a person could be considered as a Republican on the ballot. And then the purpose of the primary is to make sure that Republicans are voting for their own representation, who they would like to see on the general election to represent them. It's kind of, are you a member of any civic clubs?
Over the years, I have been, yeah.
So if you're in the Rotary Club, do you get to go to the Civitan Club and tell them, have a vote in their say of who their officers are? Or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. So it's very specific. To be a part of the organization, you have to be a member of that organization, and to have a vote in that organization, you have to be a member. Is that fair?
Most private entities or 501c charitable groups require some participation towards them in order for you to get to vote as to who the leadership of that is.
Right. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
A quick question.
Yes, sir.
Your expert opinion. In most of the elections that you've been a part of, would you say the independent, because it seems as if the independent voter is a target of this legislation, would you say they vote mostly Republican or Democrat?
Hard to say. I would say that some of it, sometimes it's influenced by the amount of interest in the race, for example. I can give you numbers, like, for example, in the 2016 Republican presidential primary, we had about 750,000 votes on the Republican side. And in the governor's election and the primary in 2018, we had about 750,000 votes on the Republican side. And then for the Senate race 2 years later, it was about 600,000 votes. Most of that has remained relatively stable over the years.
So again, you can't say
You don't know. I
how
think
an
it's
independent actually votes.
There may be Republicans out there that get excited for the race, and I assume it's the same as on the Democrat side, where if there are Republicans that are running unopposed, think, for example, I'll give you a recent example in 2020 with President Trump. There were 400,000 votes when he was essentially unopposed. So 750,000 votes in 2016, 400,000 with President Trump. Now that number went up when we had the Senate race in the August of 2020 primary to 600,000. So so it's hard to know whether or not who gets more interested, but I think the size and effort and energy in the race matters.
Mr. Chairman, next question. You used the term cheating. They are cheaters. These American Tennessee citizens. What percentage of these individuals are cheaters, would you say, in any particular race?
Well, I was saying that what our philosophy is to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. That's what we care about. So whether, and honestly, the numbers are difficult, but we estimate anywhere between 1% and 3% in any given election. And again, interest is a lot of it, where people that have, let's just say, a Democrat voting record that comes and votes in a Republican primary. And I don't know what it is for the Democrats, but I would assume that if there are cases where Republicans, known Republicans, tend to do it, and I only reference the state law, the current state law that says that you need to align with the party that you're voting in.
So again, 1% or 2% of, and I said cheaters, but that's not exactly what you meant, but it is probably 2%. So that 98% of independent voters on our current,
Sure.
they're doing what they have the right to do.
There's no doubt. Now, the problem becomes is when the elections are very small margins, and then that 1 or 2 or 3% becomes the difference in the election.
Throwing out the baby with the bathwater kind of thing, right? 99% of the independent voters are doing the right thing. We got 1 or 2% that may be cheaters, but now we want to say, okay, to the 98%, look, we're going to do it this way. You will no longer be able to vote as an independent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Any other questions? And I would say that that's not what the law is proposing. There is Republicans, Democrats, and independents, which are true independents and people of third parties. Could be Libertarian, could be the Green Party. The reason why we have primaries is so the Democrats and Republicans can vote in their primaries to choose their nominee, and only they under state law can choose their nominee. Independents or people of third party, they can either choose to affiliate. An independent can choose, like most Libertarians vote Republican, but not all of them. And a lot of independents vote in either Democrat or Republican primary, but a lot of, I would say, a huge percentage of independents don't vote and wait till the general election. And the problem we're trying to address here is how to uphold the current state law, which hopefully we all respect the state law. And the only way to really enforce the meaning of the state law is to have partisan closed primaries.
Well, currently, everybody in the state of Tennessee is a registered independent. Now, they may vote Republican or they may vote Democrat, but everybody's a registered independent. And so this bill would obviously give everybody that opportunity for them to openly affiliate with the party that they choose to vote for.
That's the biggest issue that I've had. Of course, I used to be on the state party's executive committee, as you know, before I was the state rep. It's denying me the right to vote it's denying me the right to vote in my closed primary. Because right now, as you say, the state mandates that everybody is an independent. And a lot of people is always saying that, well, I'm a registered Democrat. They're not. They vote in a Democrat primary, but they're not a registered Democrat. You're not registered anything in Tennessee but as an independent.
That's correct.
And we'd like that privilege for each party to be able to register. Is there any additional questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you, Chairman Golden.
Thank you, committee.
We're going back in session. Thank you. Is there any discussion on we need, Representative Rich, you need to describe your bill and all you want it to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman and committee. This particular piece of legislation goes to address what you just heard, a lot of the testimony. Currently, in the state of Tennessee, all voters are registered as an unaffiliated voter right now. You're only picking a particular party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, when you actually go in on that primary day to select that ballot. And I think Chairman Golden had one of the best examples when he was chatting with Representative Doggett up here. And the way that I would describe it, if I'm a member of a Baptist church and our pastor is going to be getting replaced, and we have somebody that comes in to be able to preach a sermon that particular Sunday, and it's up to the elder of that church to vote on who is going to be taking the leadership of that particular church. The Church of Christ, the Assembly down the road, the Seventh-day Adventist does not get any say in who's going to be steering that particular congregation going forward. The purpose of a primary is for Republican voters to decide who their Republican candidate's going to be, and for Democrat voters to decide who their candidates are going to be. Serving in the United States military, like I did, I know it was mentioned previously from one of the previous witnesses, is something that was held near and dear to my heart. I took an oath then. I took an oath to it now. There's currently 9 states that have what I'm proposing on the books, Florida being one of those, which has several large military bases. Kentucky, just north of us, already has closed primaries like this, which has Fort Campbell up there as well. So this is something that is already in place where we've got huge veteran and military populations. And I would, so the intent is, should this become law, what would end up happening is all voters in the state of Tennessee would end up being registered based off of their previous primary ballot that they pulled. So if you pulled a Republican ballot, you would be registered as a Republican. If you pulled a Democrat ballot, you would be registered as a Democrat. If you've never voted in a primary in the state of Tennessee, you'll be registered as an independent. You'll have the option to go onto the state's election website and change your party affiliation at any point. Like it was mentioned already, it is a misdemeanor right now to knowingly with intent go in and vote on the other side. So we're even putting that in place. It's in the text of this legislation to allow the voters to pick their party affiliation up to within 30 days of the upcoming election. And I'm available for any additional questions.
I think we do have a question. I think it goes beyond what you just said about a church voting for another church. I know in my church, we have regular attendees and we have members. When we vote to elect leaders or allocate money, only the members can vote, or the members vote to accept new members. So it goes beyond that. We had a question from Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was a great example using the church. That was one, so I'm glad that you expanded upon that. Is there, and this may be a question for legal, but if I am a true independent during a primary, an August primary where you have Democrat and Republican on the ballot, there are other elections that are going on there on that same day, maybe some city and county offices. I'll have opportunities to vote in that. But if I'm a true independent and there's no independent candidate that is on the ballot, would I have an opportunity to write a name in as an independent?
With a local election for city council or in any particular
We'll
race?
just use a state office such as, a state senator race. If it's a primary and there's a Republican candidate, a Democrat candidate, in their primaries, but as an independent person, there may not be anyone. I'm just curious to know if there's a write-in portion for an independent, since no independent qualified.
Not during a primary.
Well-
The write-in would end up being during the general election.
Well, it's my understanding you can write a candidate and request a write-in at any time. However, if a candidate, let's say you wrote in, I don't know, let's say you're voting in the Republican primary and you asked for a write-in ballot and you requested it, I think it has to be granted and it'd be put in as a provisional ballot. And then that would be checked whether that person was a legitimate candidate or not. They could be thrown off with but it'd be left up to the election commission. I think that's how it would work. But as I understand, you can request a paper ballot anytime you wish.
Thank you, and I believe you're right. I think that if I didn't declare one party or the other, I would just be voting in that county general election or what have you. So thank you. Thank you for this bill.
Any further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, and I asked everybody to speak loudly, we are voting on HB 405. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, nay. Bill passes on to full local.
Thank you, Chairman Committee.
See, next up, excuse me while I get my paperwork in order here. Next up is HB 636 by Barrett. I have a motion and a second. Let's see, we have no amendments, is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Tell us about your bill.
Thank you for the motion and the second, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 636 proposes to change current law in TCA Title II, Part 5, Section 101. The current deadline for filing for candidates to run in statewide elections is on the same day for independents and for party primaries. The problem with that is when a candidate is challenged in the primary and removed from the ballot, because that challenge occurs after the filing deadline, they are completely removed from the ballot. That creates an inequity in the system where someone who has a properly legally filed ballot with the signatures all attested to, they are removed by the ballot simply because a party challenged them. So this bill would allow additional time for any candidate who is removed from a primary ballot, 7 additional days to refile or amend in order to be added to the independent ballot.
Let's see. The only comments anyone's excuse me, or any comments, any questions from anyone's sponsor? Oh, Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this your first bill, Representative?
It is my first bill before this committee, Representative. It is not my first bill to be presented in this body.
So you've had other bills that you have presented already?
Yes, sir, but thank you for asking.
Well, absolutely. Is it true that your first name is Grinnan?
No, but I have used that in order to have folks memorize my last name.
So when you come before this committee, you just had to grin and bear it today? Is that a fair statement?
Well, I'm going to do my best to do that throughout the course of the remaining questions. Yes, sir.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
It only gets worse from here.
I can hardly wait, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we are voting on HB 0636. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Goes to full local.
Thank you.
Let's see, next up is, let's see, HB 1493 by Clemens. I have a motion and a second. Please see, no amendments, correct?
No, sir.
We have a motion and a second, and please tell us about your bill.
So what I've discovered across the state of Tennessee is very few people are aware of the fact that the state offers a free photo identification card that can be used for voter identification purposes. As you all know, we passed a law several years ago, perhaps before some of you arrived here, that required photo identification of a state-issued ID to be able to enter the polling place and vote. So as a result of that, I think the state created this free voter ID option, or this free photo identification option, to which I'm referring, that very few people know about. So what this legislation would do is simply require the county election commissions and the Secretary of State's office to advise citizens of this state that there is a free photo identification available to them through the Department of Safety and Homeland Security that they may then use to vote in the state of Tennessee. Unfortunately, I believe, when this program initially started, the main full service centers, of which there are about 45, I believe the Department of Safety said in testimony this week, and as well as county clerks could offer this. Well, currently, only those 45 full service driver centers operated by the Department of Safety offer this ID, which means many of you who represent rural areas, your voters may not be able to vote simply because they don't have a state-issued photo identification card. And many of your counties that you represent don't even have a full-service center. So, unfortunately, that is a barrier to entry to the polling place. But again, all my legislation does is seeks to inform potential voters who would be citizens of the state of Tennessee that there is a free photo identification card that can be issued by the state of Tennessee to them for their use for voter purposes. That's it.
Oh, and I want to apologize. I said representative. Everybody's got no titles. Leader Clemens.
I'll take whatever you want to call me. I've been called a lot worse up here.
We have, before any questions, we have a testimony and go out of session if that is correct. If that is no objections, we are going out of sessions to hear from State Director of Elections, Mark Goins.
Mark Goins, Coordinator of Elections for the great state of Tennessee. We certainly agree that voters need to be informed, and in fact, many of you are familiar with the information that we give out. We give these out, local counties give these out, with voter registration cards that we send out, basically anything and everything that we currently send out. We talk about the photo ID. I'll not read the entire statement, but basically it's 7 lines. But at the end of the 7th line, it says, learn more about exemptions to the photo ID law and how to get a free photo ID at govotn.gov. And although the intent of the legislation may be great, when you're looking actually at this legislation, what it does, it changes basically those 7 lines to require us to do essentially read every bit of this with every election communication that's oral, that's whether it's verbal, social media. So literally, if we send out a tweet, we would have to include this message. When you call our office, we would have to include this message. We did a time, it's like it's almost 2 minutes to read the message that this bill would require us to read. So essentially, someone calls and they would like to say, what time are my polling hours open? We would have to read this message. We wouldn't be able to tweet the results because, frankly, there's a character limit. Instagram, essentially, we wouldn't be able to use it to promote voting. Very similar with Facebook. Essentially, if this legislation passed as it's written in the broad form that it is, it will have a chilling effect. It basically it makes the other information on this irrelevant. This has early voting days. It has election day. It has where you can reach out to the Division of Elections. Once again, I'm not against getting the information out there. In fact, we do get the information out there, and we get the information out there any way that we can. But this bill is the wrong direction to do so. I know it's an unintended consequence, but essentially, if this bill passes, we wouldn't even be able to give out I voted stickers at the polling location because we would not be able to put this on an I voted sticker. And if you read the legislation, it says any election-related communication. And like I say, that's verbal, that's written, it's social media, it's anything that would be disseminated from the Secretary of State's office, the Division of Elections, as well as the Election Commission. So anyway, I agree with the leader on his intent, We're trying to accomplish that as best we can. We put it in every press release that we send out. We're doing our best already, but this is overkill, and really will have a chilling effect.
Any questions for Director Goins? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you have any conversations with the sponsor of the bill, the leader?
I did not have any communications with the leader. Unfortunately, I was out last week with strep throat and another illness at the same time.
So you suggested that it's a little overkill, but you agree that the communication needs to be put out there.
Oh, I think we're doing it. I think we're doing our best to inform the voter as much as possible, and we actually put the language, as I read in there, if how to get a free for all ID, you can get the further information at Go Vote TN. You go to Go Vote TN. We've literally got the information that actually is being requested that we put with every communication we send out. It's actually at govotetn.gov.
Yes.
So the sheet you held up, you're saying that's the overkill part.
Yeah, this literally, Representative Miller, if you want to see it, I mean, we could go role play if you want to. I could act like I'm calling you as a representative. You can read literally what we would have to read. I might just be calling to say, hey, I would like for you not to vote for House Bill 1718. You would literally have to read 2 minutes of photo ID information.
Okay, thank you.
Under this bill.
Any other questions of Director Goins? Seeing none, thank you, and we'll go back into session. Leader Clemens, you have any are there any questions of the members? If not, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I certainly understand why Mr. Goins would interpret the legislation and its requirements in the broadest possible form to avoid doing it. But the legislation in subsection A4 there, section 1, in those bold letters, as you can see, is the only actual required language, and it says a state-issued photo identification card may be used for voting purposes as authorized by TCA section 27112C. That's the only specific language that's required. It's not a page of 12-point font that was just shown to you. The stuff in here that is actually asked to be included in this by the statute could literally be a QR code to a landing page at the Tennessee Secretary of State's website that provides this information. So all they need to do is advise them that this ID card, free ID card exists, and say, learn more information about it here, have a QR code, and then this bold language. That's it. So I understand Goins' argument here. Committee will decide as it wants. I think that we do need to realize that very few people across the state of Tennessee are aware of this free ID option, and we need to do everything that we possibly can to encourage voter participation, because right now we're 47th in the country. So, if we're going to spend some money or try to make things available to voters, I think we should make every possible effort to do so. But with that, I give it back to the committee. Thank you.
We have a question from Chairman Doggett.
Thank you. And is there anything, if this message was failed to be prominently displayed, is there any kind of remedy for that or punishment that might be incurred by the county election commission or the Secretary of State's office for not displaying this?
No, I wasn't trying to create a civil cause of action here or some private cause of action in this. We didn't put that language in here. It simply requires the county election commissions and the Secretary of State to do it. That's generally enough when you're dealing with a governmental entity. I don't want people, filing more lawsuits against the state of Tennessee, but if this was in here, they would certainly have to do it.
So if I called my local election commission and was going to ask about, what the times that the doors open tomorrow for early voting or something like that, they would have to read this statement off to me?
No, because this requires, with each election-related communication disseminated to the residents of the state of Tennessee. So anything they send out to you proactively that they disseminate is where this has to be provided.
But not if I request information, only if they initiate that contact with me, they have to provide this
The
information.
dissemination of that being a proactive form, yeah. So if you called and asked about it, I would hope they would tell you about it, but not on this bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we are voting on HB 1493 by Clemens. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. No. Noes have it. Sorry, bill fails.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
And I've been given the sad news that we're at the end of our agenda. I know all of you in the audience are disappointed, but and the members, but I want to thank everyone for being here. And before we close, do the members have any announcements or personal orders? Seeing none, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. We are adjourned.